Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to episode 238 of the Civil Gore Podcast. I'm your host, Tim.
And this is Brian. And Tim, this is a movie that I didn't really ever could see us doing. You see what I did there? No, I'm kidding. Yeah. Of course I knew we were going to do it.
Joshua was, when Joshua came up while I was watching the second one, I said, Joshua, look, the Invisible Man. And he looked, and I just laughed at him like, dude, you can't see the Invisible Man. He was like, yeah. Kind of
poor Joshua.
He's at the roll eyes stage of dad jokes. So,
oh no!
Yeah.
Well, he'll get out of it soon enough, and he'll be back.
Yeah, he'll be back. I'll bring him back. I just gotta get better material, I think.
Yeah, need to up to level 2 of dad jokes.
Yeah. So we're doing the Invisible Man series again. This is the series I was the least familiar with going into the Summer Slaycation. Now I guess you could kind of argue I was just as unfamiliar with the Creature from the Black Lagoon series only because I had not seen the sequels, but I had seen the original film so many times. I felt like pretty much like a creature expert. So I can't say that I had seen The Invisible Man all that often. I think I'd seen it only once. I think the first time I'd ever seen it was when I got the Blu-ray set. So this one was definitely a very unfamiliar ground for me. I'd only seen the original movie once, had never seen any of the sequels, and so we'll see how it goes here. Now, this is a series that, as we go on, you're going to realize is not very horror. It's really The Invisible Man is the closest one to like a true horror film, only because of the villainous nature of the lead character. But as they go on, they get really, I would say, not even horror adjacent. They get straight into the more, I don't know, actiony drama-ish category. So not really what I would consider a horror icon per se, but I think the first movie is really what establishes The Invisible Man as a horror icon. After that, it's there's really no relation to the original movie. So,
well, the second one does relate
a little bit, yeah.
The brother
that's
connection,
true.
But yeah,
I think that's it. I think that according to my book, like the rest of them are all completely standalone.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see how it goes. The first one up is, of course, The Invisible Man. Again, this might be a short episode, guys. We had to record our dismemberment tonight as well. So, and really with only doing these two movies, this could be a little on the shorter side, but we'll have a 3-movie feature next week.
Yes.
So The Invisible Man was 1933, directed by James Whale. No surprise that this is a great movie because of the director. Right. You knew you were going to get a fantastic movie. And, I think this character actually fits James Whale's style better than Frankenstein. Because James Whale inserted, as you know, especially from Bride of Frankenstein, he inserted a lot of comedy into his movies. Very subtle comedy at times. And sometimes a little, maybe even dark comedy. And he was always very clever with it. And The Invisible Man is really a dark comedy if you really look at it that way. There's some. I think it comes off more horror, this original one, just because as we'll see, The Invisible Man is so freaking evil.
Yeah,
but
he really is.
But some of the stunts and the pranks and stuff are really, really comedic when you take them out of that villainous context. So we'll see.
Una O'Connor alone, she's like. And he used her in Bride of Frankenstein too as like some crazy screaming woman, and it's funny. It's like that's like her niche. And what's crazy is she died like 20 years after this movie because that's how old she was in this. She was like, so it's pretty interesting. But and this one features a character from Horrify too, Dr. Cranley. Remember, he's one of the.
That's right. Yeah.
People that move around.
So let's go through the cast here. We got Claude, of course. Claude Rains as Dr. Jack Griffin, aka the Invisible Man. Gloria Stewart as Flora Cranley.
And I'm sure people recognize Gloria Stewart's name, of course, from Titanic. She played Old Rose, So
that's right. Yeah,
that's like think of how like she was in this, and then featured in one of the biggest movies of all time. Years later, it's crazy to think about it.
And if you're a Rocky Horror Picture Show fan, you should you should at least recognize from the lyrics,
Yes.
Claude Rains is the Invisible Man.
Yes.
From the title song. William Harrigan as Dr. Arthur Kemp, Henry Travers as Dr. Cranley, Una O'Connor as Jenny Hall, Forrester Harvey as Herbert Hall, Holmes Herbert as Chief of Police, E. Clive as Constable Jaffers, Harry Stubbs as Inspector Byrd, Donald Stewart as Inspector Lane, and Merle Tottenham as Millie. I will say, at least these two movies, there's always a strong emphasis on the, I wouldn't say bumbling, but comedic cops. Like, they're always entertaining. Yeah, they're really entertaining.
Like that whole sequence with where he's trying to well, in the second one more so. I'll wait till we get to that one. But the second one has one of my favorite scenes out of the two films. But
yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
The synopsis here is: a scientist finds a way of becoming invisible, but in doing so, he becomes murderously insane. This is a kind of a moral question here that I wanted to bring up about this movie, is because the Invisible Man is, as we know from the Horrified board game, where he's so annoying that I don't even like playing against him. Because what he does is, in the board game, he runs around, he's like basically steals all your stuff. He's super, super challenging. And in the movie, it's kind of thematic, because in the movie, he is just this total a-hole. A-hole. I mean, really like psychopath. And, but, you know, as you learn in the movie, he's insane because of the drug he's taken that makes him invisible. But, you know, when I first watched this movie, like, I still felt zero sympathy for him, even though you could technically argue it was the drugs that were making him insane. He just comes off in this movie as like 100% psychopath. I don't care what the cause of it was. This guy needed to go.
And that's what I found interesting. Usually in these movies, you know, you kind of see the build up. But this guy, I mean, this movie literally starts with him, like almost like mid film, if you think about it. Out of most film, like, you start with him. He just, like, the opening scene is him walking in as the Invisible Man. I mean, you don't know it yet, but you know, if you know the iconic look, you know, he comes walking in like that, and right off the bat, not even like an ease into him being an asshole, but he's just like, give me a room, you know, and they're just like, well, we don't have a room. He's like, I want it. You can surely get it ready for me. You know, it's like right
so
off the bat,
arrogant.
he's like harassing this poor like inn. And I want to say another thing about that inn. I think there need to be more places like that to stay. Those always, I love those in old films, those inns, you know, where you go into a bar and there's like a nice room upstairs, you know, like you can rent.
Yeah, like a tavern.
Yeah, like
bring back
taverns. They need taverns and inns. They need more taverns and not like the, you know, Holiday Inns, like that kind of inns. I mean like an inn, you know, like that, where there's an innkeeper, you know, and like they bring up your lunch and like, you know, like kind of, I mean, yes, bed and breakfasts are kind of like that, but not like the same as this. Like, you know, this is kind of cool.
And it's called something like the Blue Pig.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just go right down the road. He'll have a room for you at the Blue Pig. I love that.
And you know what this reminded me of? So remember how we were talking about like the Universal, you know, the monsters section in Epic Universe, and how we didn't want like just like oh, like, you know, like the Wolfman's like haircuttery or something like that. You know. However, this tavern would have been a great. It should be a great spot, but they do it kind of like the Ollivanders. Where you go in there and they tell you to go in and have a drink, and they're like, oh, but be careful, you know, the Invisible Man could hear. And then all of a sudden, stuff start going off around you, and you just sit there and you get like a little 5-minute experience, and you go into the next section and maybe get a drink or something. Wouldn't that be kind of cool?
That would be super cool. Or, alternatively, you make it like a Harmony Hall at Carowinds, where it's like from the outside, it looks like this little tiny tavern, and then you go in and it's spacious enough for like a theme park accommodations, but it's still kind of done in that old style. I mean, Busch Gardens kind of has, I wouldn't say like a tavern, but it has kind of that old school
house,
they have a lot of those like old school looking places that are really, really cool. So
the one we went to where we recorded the Coaster Radio, that little like that Grogan's, I think, pub.
Yeah, they had like the mead flights and everything.
Yeah,
and they have, and the one in the back where they have the big Halloween show, that one's cool too. I mean, it kind of has that, you know, that one's a lot bigger. It's more like a Harmony Hall style, but it still has that feel, that had that old world feel to it. So that would be really, really, really cool.
I definitely think they need to do something like that there. Yeah.
The Invisible Man. It's a great movie. If you can get into the spirit of the mean-spiritedness of this guy. I mean, because he's not easy to like, but in a way I kind of enjoyed that, because most of the Universal monsters, if you think about it, are very sympathetic. Like, Frankenstein's monster, of course, is super sympathetic. The Wolfman, Lon Chaney Jr. really sells that whole sympathy side. The Mummy, in some ways, is a little sympathetic because he was, they broke the curse by breaking into his tomb, and he had this tragic love affair. And then, of course, Creature from the Black Lagoon, they kind of just moved right in on his territory. He wasn't bothering anybody.
Yeah.
And they come after him. The Invisible Man's the first real monster we get out of this whole series that I couldn't dredge up any sympathy for. Now, maybe if this, as Brian was alluding to, if this had started with him, becoming insane as he took the drug, then I think I would have felt a little more sympathy for him. And we'll actually see that in the next movie, which we're kind of jumping ahead.
Yeah.
But the way this one starts with him just right off the bat, just this arrogant, really just psychopathic dude, you never get that sympathetic side of it. And so
you get it for like 30 seconds before, like, when he's trying to when they're trying to throw him out, and he's like trying to be like, he's like, please just leave me alone, please just let me stay, I need to do that. And then after 2 seconds, he's like back to rage mode.
Then he spends the rest of the movie making you hate him all over again. But the effects in this one are amazing for the time. I was reading in the book about how they did all these effects. Now, some of them are obviously fishing line. And there's even a few spots, if you're really eagle-eyed, you could see the strings.
Yeah.
But, you have to look at it as a whole. This is 1933. A lot of the effects are still really darn good. I mean, there's one scene with a bicycle, like, pedaling itself down the road, which is, like, pretty amazing. And then...
or like when he first takes his bandages off and you get that like weird like where you just see like missing eye and missing that, like, that's creepy looking. That's like really well done.
It's really well done, and the way they did it was a crude. I was reading in the book on how they did it. It was really basically green screen, but it was black screen. So back then they didn't have green, the green screen technology.
They didn't have the color green back then.
No, everything was in black and white back then. Yeah. Don't you know that, Brian?
Yeah, that's why the creature. We didn't know he's green until years later. Yeah.
So what they did is they would have. They would film, people all in pure black on a black background, like moving stuff around. And then they would have to go back and frame by frame clean up the edges and everything. And they said in The Invisible Man, there was 64,000 frames that had to be hand touched.
Oh my God.
To clean that up. So, I mean, just think of how insane that is. Today, this would be so trivial as to, I mean, you could do this at home today. Essentially, but with the computers and stuff we have, but back then that's the way they had to do it. I mean, this was groundbreaking stuff back then, and it still holds up. I'm telling you, go watch 1933. This movie's almost 100 years old.
Yeah,
and tell me those effects aren't darn good for a 100-year-old movie. I mean, they still hold up pretty darn good.
You almost take it for granted because it's so those effects are so commonplace now. But like Tim said, you could literally do it on your iPhone now if you wanted. It's like they have an app to make that happen. But like back, so think about that people are so jaded now, they like expect that kind of technique. But if you go back, think about 1933, and they're making like a man become invisible. I mean, that's impressive.
It's creative too. It's like, it's not just what you would expect. Like, it's not just like a coffee mug floating in the air or something.
Yeah.
And like I said, like the bicycle scene where he like jumps on a bicycle to get out of town. I mean, it's like creatively done where they didn't take the simple, easy route, right? It wasn't like a glass fell off of a table by itself. They did some effects that on paper were like, well, how the hell are we going to do that? I don't know. He's got to jump on a bike and ride off. How is that going to happen? And they somehow pulled it off. I was very impressed watching this. Again, the first time I watched it, I was completely blown away because I did not expect that level of effects. And watching again, I just had a further appreciation of it, especially after reading that book, how they had to clean all that stuff up by hand drawing on each frame of the film to clean up any edges or something where it was a little wonky. I mean, you could tell.
Some you could catch some where they weren't perfect, and you can kind of see a little bit of like.
Yeah, it has a little bit of the green screen effect, but I mean, my God, they have modern movies that have that.
Yeah.
So I can't fault them. It was really amazing, and Claude Rains does just a fantastic job. I mean, you only see him at the very end of the movie,
Right.
But for him to put on that kind of a voice performance, and knowing he's not even going to be seen through most of the movie, it's just really incredible. But very entertaining movie. It's again, in my mind, probably the most evil. I'm going to say flat out, it is the most evil Universal horror quote unquote monster by far.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's no sympathy to this guy, and he
what he does to those poor innkeepers. They must literally they must have to keep them, like, if there's not an IKEA nearby them, they're like, I don't even know how they have as many glasses as they do. You know, it's like he breaks about 51 of their glasses. One of them, like, literally launches at the poor old woman's head.
I'm just laughing
her in the head.
It's like it's almost, it's evil, but at the same time, it's almost like a kid in a candy store level evil. Like, it's like, he at one point he's literally like singing. Yeah. As he's like, he's completely off the deep end, and it's kind of funny. It almost reminds me of like the Joker or somebody in Batman. Yeah. That's how insane he is.
Well, did you ever see the Amazon Women on the Moon, where they have that sequence at the end? It's like I think it's a bonus sequence where or maybe it's not the bonus one. I don't know. It might be just the one in the end sequence where Ed Begley Jr., he's the son of the Invisible Man, and he goes in and he just goes, "Ooh, look at me!" And he just basically he's like running around naked, but like so the whole town's like, "Yeah, oh, how did this happen?" And it's like, but you can totally see him. He just thinks he's invisible the whole time, and it's hilarious. And it's so, especially when you watch this, you realize how brilliant that parody of it was.
Yeah, it's The Invisible Man is probably, I mean, it's obviously iconic because of this portrayal. I mean, right. This what you're seeing here is what I would consider why The Invisible Man has lasted for almost 100 years. Yeah. Because the rest of the series really doesn't have any of the same feel to it. So this is going to be your icon right here, is Claude Rains' version. Yes. But let's move into the sequel, The Invisible Man Returns. Now, this one came out years later, 1940. The Invisible Man was 33. And this one was directed by new director Joe May. This one starred Sir Cedric Hardwicke as Richard Cobb, Vincent Price, very young Vincent Price.
Yeah.
As Jeffrey...
before he was very Vincent Pricey.
Yeah, he was bargain basement right at this point.
Yeah, he was like Vincent pre-sale.
Sale price.
Yeah, Vincent pre-order.
Jeffrey Radcliffe, Nan Gray as Helen Manson, John Sutton as Dr. Frank Griffin, Cecil Kellaway as Samson, Alan Napier as Willie Spears, and Forrester Harvey as Belle Jenkins.
He's back, but he's a different character, I guess.
Yeah. The owner of a coal mining operation, falsely imprisoned for fratricide, takes a drug to make him invisible despite its side effect, gradual madness. So this one is very interesting. I actually really like this one.
I did too. I was really impressed on how I was expecting of it. Once I realized it wasn't a sequel in terms of like they didn't resurrect Claude Rains' character, like, and I'm like, they're gonna use that too. I said it's probably gonna be a step down, and while it wasn't as good as the first one, but that just shows how good the first one was, not how anything against this one. As this one, if you just took it as a standalone, was a really great movie.
Yeah, it has a very loose affiliation with the first movie because the scientist who's experimenting with invisibility in this movie is the brother of Jack Griffin, the main character of The Invisible Man. But that's really only kind of mentioned. It's not really a major plot point. They could have substituted
other than that his formula, like
but the formula carries over. But it's really an interesting premise because Vincent Price is Jeffrey Radcliffe. He's falsely imprisoned for this murder, and so you have this John Sutton who's experimenting with this invisibility stuff. He believes in his innocence, so he's going to help him break out of prison, give him this drug, and what I loved about this movie. Compared to the first one is that you're not jumping in on the same character. This one gives you time to see that madness. Right. That gradual descent into madness, which is kind of what we missed from the first one. I don't think the first one is... I don't think that was a mistake of the first one because I think it is so effective because he's full-blown mad when you start the movie. I think that's what makes it so great. But it was nice to see kind of go back and see how that had progressed in the first movie, this is probably how it started out. He probably started out as a pretty nice guy.
Yeah, and Vincent Price realizes, he's like, in this part, he actually, his character realizes what's happening at some point. So you see that he's like, oh my God, what was I doing? I'm risking madness to escape, and and all this stuff. Like, he realizes, like, did he make a mistake? He ponders his choice, and he realizes that that there's, now that there's like, there could be some retribution against him from just trying to do the right thing by, portray, like, because there was no way, back then it wasn't like he was going to be able to get out of there. He was going to be, he was he was accused, and that was it. And, there's no way he wasn't going to be held accountable for the murder. So, but here there's like an accountability of the choice he still makes, and he realizes that, and he's descending to madness, so it's hard for him to like prevent it. Like, he knows it's too late. But, and it's excitement of where, like you said, where later on it's not so much horror. And that's the kind of thing, it's almost his race against time, where it's like, his friend there is trying to find this formula, find the trick. And he's, and he feels like he's close, but then then you get that struggle of him feeling like he's let down his friends, Well,
yeah, there's a nice little subplot here because he's basically trying to find the real killer.
Yeah,
that's a classic story, right? I've got to find I was falsely imprisoned. Now I got to find the real killer before X happens. Right. And that's a common plot line, but it's neat to see in this movie because Vincent Price has to find and confront and somehow get this murderer to confess so that he's off the hook. But at the same time, he's fighting this race against time before he goes mad. And then his Dr. Sutton is trying to find the cure so that they can, because really by turning him invisible, if they can't cure him, like, what has he done? He's really just doomed him in a different way.
Right. And that's what's cool, because usually these movies always have a race against time. Like, okay, you have this time before you get executed. Well, now it's the same thing. Just, in terms of like, he's going to probably, he's eventually either going to die or just go into an insane and probably be killed anyway, and be killed in a different way. Like, anything remnants of what he was before that is going to be gone. So I like that race of time. Like, that's a different kind of like hourglass, going down, where it's like this guy now is like, they're racing for the cure for him, because you're right. Like, what did they do for him? They got him out. They took him out of one prison into another prison, but this prison is all in his mind because he's going mad and he's going crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this one again has some very strong comedic elements. Now, it wasn't directed by James Whale, of course, so you kind of miss that James Whale humor is kind of unique to him. I think it's very like I said, it's alternating. It's kind of subtle. It's kind of dark. This one, maybe this comedy is a little bit more overt, but it's still very strong, and I enjoyed it kind of more in this movie, because in the first movie, the comedic elements again are so tinged with that darkness and that evil of the main character that you kind of can't let yourself relax and enjoy it. But in The Invisible Man Returns, that comedy, especially around the cops and stuff.
Oh my God, that scene in the jail was hilarious.
It's a
like,
lighter.
He's like, yes, sirree, Bob. Right, Bob? It's like, there was like puns and kind of things.
Yeah, it was lighter because you had some sympathy for the main character, and you kind of had that freedom to relax a little bit. And I just loved it. Like, I love the scene where the cop is talking about how Vincent Price escaped.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he went in here, and he turned around, and he's talking the whole time, and then he comes in here. And then I walk in, and he's like, there's his clothes on the floor.
Yeah. What was the line he said when he was like helping? He was like, "Oh, don't worry, we're bosom friends," or something like that line, or something.
Yeah,
to crack me up.
All the cops in here are like, they're very likable. They don't come off as bumbling idiots. It's just that they're characters. They're fun characters, and there's a lightheartedness to the whole script that I really, really liked. And the other thing I thought was awesome is they have invisible guinea pigs.
Yeah, that's true. It's almost like the little Frankenstein, the little people in Bride of Frankenstein. Like, they have another version of it, and like they show they like show that he's testing it on like guinea pigs, like the classic literal guinea pig.
Yes, Frank Griffin was, and I own 3 guinea pigs, so it was especially enjoyable for me because they make that eep 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 eep
Yeah,
sound. That is spot on. It looks like guinea pigs in 1940 made the same sounds they still do today when they're begging for their carrot in the morning. So he's experimenting on these guinea pigs, and they have the little guinea pig harness. Well, I mean, it's not a difficult prop, right? My granddad used to buy those. Did you ever see back in the Invisible Dog? Like I'm walking my invisible dog, and you have
those are classic.
Yeah, the classic invisible dog trick, and you got the leash and the harness comes down. It's like that with a guinea pig. And so, I mean, you obviously know how they do it, but it's still charming for some reason. I like it. Yeah.
Even Julie was like, oh, like, because, unfortunately, spoiler alert, the guinea pig, he thinks he has the cure and the guinea pig is invisible, and then it becomes visible but then dies at the shock. It can't handle it. But, and actually, I was going to say, one of the most, I think that the sequence in this movie, I think that kind of represents the movie so well is when he, and he calls him up and he says, I want you to come to my house. We're going to all celebrate. And then the science, oh my God, what's his name?
Dr. Griffin.
Dr. Griffin, because he goes, what are we celebrating? I didn't solve it. I'm letting you guys down. But Vincent Price is Starling's character. He's going so into madness. He's celebrating as if he's like, I am free. What are you talking about? I am cured. He doesn't even realize what's going on at that point because it's taking over his mind. And it's like that parallel. I'm like, that sums up this movie perfectly, this scene.
Yeah, he's really well done. His descent into madness.
Yeah.
It starts getting you really believe he's going mad. He really sells it. I thought he did a great job. This is Vincent Price before he was like full on the character. Vincent Price eventually became a character in and of himself. But this is so early on in his career that he's
which shows he can act. It shows he's good actor.
That's what I was trying to say. You're not seeing Vincent Price the character. You're seeing Vincent Price the actor, and it's really darn good. Really, really darn good. I enjoyed this movie a ton. I had zero expectations for this. I had no clue what to expect. I did read ahead in the book a little bit about the Invisible Man series because I wanted to kind of get an overview of what I was getting into. And they get kind of crazy. I think the next one, which is The Invisible Woman, goes straight into full comedy territory. I don't think it's even horror at all, but we'll see how that plays out in our rankings. I think these are going to be probably pretty crazy to rank.
I think these are going to be 1 and 2.
Yeah,
I could say that almost safely say. I mean, granted, we could be wrong. There could be one that blows us away, and we're not expecting it. But I know right now. I mean, it's 1 and 2. I mean, that's what
I can't imagine that they're better than these.
No,
because I really enjoyed both of these. I think they're both incredibly solid movies. Obviously, The Invisible Man's a classic. I think The Invisible Man Returns is probably an underrated little gem. I would definitely put it in that category.
I don't hear really people mention it a lot, and it could be just because I don't know. Maybe we're hearing about so much modern horror and other things, and they go to the true original classics and not the sequels. But
it's just like Revenge of the Creature. I never really hear about, but I thought that was a really fun movie. I mean, I wouldn't put The Invisible Man Returns as high as I would put Revenge of the Creature in terms of how much I enjoyed it as a sequel. But I still really, really enjoyed it. I mean, I thought this was a great return to the franchise. It sheds a new aspect of the story that we didn't get in the first movie. It's got some great cast. It's got some great performances, a lot of comedy, an intriguing plot. I couldn't find anything wrong with it. I had no critique of this one at all. It was great.
This was both of these were extremely fun watches in different ways, which is what's great.
Yeah. So, I told you guys this would probably be a short episode, only covering these 2 movies. And, again, there's only so much you could talk about when a movie is like an hour and 10 minutes long, hour and 15, hour and 20. And I know these are classics, but, they're classics that have been talked about and discussed for decades on end. And I don't even pretend to be able to shed any new light on these. But all I can give you is our impressions and how much we enjoyed watching these. So I hope that's enough to inspire you, if you haven't seen these, to go seek them out, because I think all of these Universal Monster movies will give you some level of enjoyment, whether it's from a historical perspective or from a discovering something new perspective, which I have, especially with this sequel. And at the very least, even the movies that you don't really care for, I guarantee you, because I've done it, go listen to the Film Historian audio commentary for it, and you will get a whole new appreciation for it. Even the ones you don't like as much, you will love those commentaries. But yeah, so we will be back next week with our second half of The Invisible Man, which I got to look this up real quick, Brian, 'cause I don't even remember the names of them. I know the next one is The Invisible Woman.
Yeah, and then it was
The Invisible Agent.
That was the one. I was going to say there's a really weird one where it doesn't say man or woman in it.
The Invisible Agent is a, basically, according to the book, this came out in 1942, so it's World War II, when Hollywood was really cranking out the pro-Allies World War II movies, and apparently Invisible Agent's very much in the World War II propaganda category. And then the last one will be The Invisible Man's Revenge from 1944, which was the last of the franchise. And I don't know much about that one. I don't remember what I read about it in the book, so I may have to go back and revisit that one. I think I was so thrown by the fact that the next one's a comedy and the second one's a World War II propaganda film that I never got to what the Invisible Man's Revenge was. But we will be going over those next week, and then that's it. That's it for our Summer Slaycation, and then we'll be rolling right into Busch Gardens preview trip episode. We're going to have a catch-up. I think we're going to do a catch-up episode on just stuff we've watched as we've been doing the Summer Slaycation that we haven't gotten to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, our whole October haunt preview. It's going to be, Halloween previews. I mean, everything just slam-packed full of content that we have coming up after the Summer Slaycation. It's kind of been building as we've been doing the Summer Slaycation. There's kind of been this backlog of stuff that we're just saving that we can kind of dump after we finish up these movies. Yeah,
so there should be some unusual fun episodes. And then the horror challenge will be there really soon. I got to finish that up. Yeah,
I've already started. As far as Halloween goes, you pretty much got to start in September, because October 1st you're too late. Around here they seem a little late to me. Maybe I'm just kind of jumping the gun. Maybe I have to wait till after Labor Day. But it seemed to me around here that the stuff wasn't cranking up as fast as I'd hoped. Lowe's and Home Depot did just get all their Halloween stuff in. Spirit Halloween has not opened yet.
So Costco got some good candies and stuff weird gummies and eyeball.
Home Depot has an amazing. I saw this today. An amazing animatronic. It's $300, but it's a broom. It's a witch. Okay, imagine this broom that's 10 feet tall, like a 10-foot tall broom, and on the end of it is a witch, and the way they've got this made, it looks like she's floating on the end of this broom.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the witch is like 10 feet long or something. I mean, this thing's massive. And then the witch's eyes are LED screens. So she has eyeballs that are looking around and looking at you and stuff.
There's some. It seems like they're really upping the animatronic game the last couple of years.
It was the thing that's so cool about it though is the way it's mounted. It looks like she's free floating in the air. It's just that the broom is what's anchoring her, and it's just 10-foot broom. It's so cool. It's also very expensive. And they had some a 12-foot animatronic werewolf. I mean, they had some massive thing, and I see the LED eye thing is a new thing they're doing now with the animatronics. So I guess it's kind of a small step on the home front to what they're doing, in the theme parks with the projection mapping animatronics.
Oh, yeah.
But this is kind of a baby step to that. But you have these LED eyeball screens that have them move around and stuff. So really, really cool stuff. My dad is having his annual party, 70th birthday / Halloween party, and he has vowed he's going all out on Halloween props this year, and he's given them all to me after the party. So
that's
awesome. I don't know what I'm going to come home with.
Tell him to get the witch.
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna send him a picture of this witch and like, yeah, Dad, this thing's incredible. I don't know where I would store this thing, but it's freaking amazing. So
in your bedroom.
Yeah.
Olivia won't mind, right?
I don't think this thing would fit in my bedroom.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, so we will. We got lots of fun stuff coming up. The kids are just so excited for Howl-O-Scream. They can't.
I'm excited for Howl-O-Scream.
I am too. Yeah. Olivia's excited. I mean, everybody's excited. So
nice.
Lots of good stuff to come, guys. And we'll see you back here soon.
Yes. Yeah.